Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and this is Radioland, my international radio trends newsletter for July the 19th, 2026. Data from Europe and the US. And this podcast is sponsored by RSS.com, where you can host your podcast free if you like, but you can also earn money from it too. If you'd prefer to hear this podcast without the ads, then that's cool too. Just find Apple Podcasts and hit the button in there. Now, the EBU has released its Radio Trends Report for 2026. Weekly reach across Europe is 81.3%, which is down 2.7% from 5 years ago. And time spent listening is 2 hours, 10 minutes per day. That's down 15 minutes on 5 years ago, but it is down 50 minutes, gosh, that's quite a lot, from 20 years ago. There's a big graph you'll find on the newsletter version of this podcast at radioland.email. Nielsen also released its podcast Listen and Watch report. There is information in there for radio as well. Particularly, it quotes Edison Research's share of ear for quarter one, which says that 20% of time spent with ad-supported audio is podcasting. Radio, though, more than 3 times larger. In Australia, Kyle Sandilands will start his paid-for live online show on August the 10th. It'll cost 99 Australian dollars for the year. That's £51 or 69 US dollars. Listeners won't be able to buy monthly, though, so just a yearly one-off fee. The podcast Game Changers Radio, Craig and Irene, seem to think it'll be easy to get 10,000 listeners paying that. Sandilands has said he needs 50,000 to cover costs. Prior to his sacking, his show had 1.1 million listeners, 96,000 of those online. He had 291,000 listeners to the podcast as well. I am fascinated to find out how many paid subscribers he's really going to get. My suspicion is that he's going to have to work quite hard to get up to 10,000, but we'll see. Now, I think this might be a world first, DAB Plus being used to bring in a radio station from overseas. The Rock, a radio station from New Zealand, is soon to be available in Brisbane on DAB Plus, courtesy of Nova. Nova seems to be playing quite an interesting game, actually. On Nova Player, it also has a feed from the UK's Talk Sport, as well as 2 audio feeds from TV channels Fox Sports News and Sky News Radio. The appearance of The Rock on DAB Plus is probably partially to help with music rights costs for the online app, but also actually Brisbane is a pretty good fit musically, I think, for this. Currently it's running non-stop tests. I believe it starts at the end of August. The UK government has announced plans to ensure that UK licensed radio stations must be available on smart speakers operated by Alexa, Google and Siri. A consultation has launched as well. The news has been welcomed by commercial radio trade body in the UK, Radio Centre. ARN's stock price in Australia means that the company is quite affordable right now, and reportedly SEG are interested in buying ARN. SEG are the owners of SEN, which is a set of sports radio stations in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane that nobody listens to. Australian radio has an ownership limit of 2 licenses per area, and ARN are already at that limit. So any merged company would need to bear that in mind, i.e. I'm not quite sure how that would work, frankly, if you were to merge those two. Who knows? In the UK, Times Radio, which is owned by News UK, and Boom Radio, which is entirely independent, promoted each other for 6 weeks, which is quite interesting. I wondered if there was any ad sales connection, but there isn't. Times Radio is sold entirely in-house. Boom Radio is represented by Bauer Media, though for news, both are supplied by Independent Radio News. Now, both stations are clearly complementary. It's interesting and refreshing to see them both promote each other. Also in the UK, the BBC released its annual report and accounts. Notably, the previous year had a report entitled Radio Performance by Service, which covered the cost of programming for each radio station. As one example, BBC Radio 2 cost £49 million or 65 million US dollars for programming alone. That works out to 1 pence per listener per hour, though. Or BBC Radio 3, £37 million, 5p per listener per hour. This year, that page and all of those costs have mysteriously disappeared. For all the hard commercial work of the past few years, BBC commercial revenue is flat, and the dividend back to the public service is actually 3.5% lower this year. Ailing Brisbane talk radio station 4BC has removed its breakfast show, but did give them a final day to say goodbye to their audiences, which is good to see. Jason Matthews, the current host of Mornings, will take over breakfast from Monday. Matthews is the 5th new breakfast show on the station since 2020. Now, in May, I noted with concern that the 4BC breakfast team, or any 4BC staff at all, didn't appear on owner Tapped Media's sizzle reel at all. The company replied to me at the time that it was merely time constraints and, quotes, in no way reflective of our commitment to 4BC and the 100% live and local content strategy in the Brisbane market. Well, how's that live and local strategy going? Well, it lasted 2 months. The weekday afternoon shift will be networked from Sydney, and the Saturday breakfast show will also be piped in from New South Wales as well. In Ireland, a community radio station might close after a new board has discovered more than €40,000 of liabilities, which is roughly about 35,000 US dollars, and the radio station has also lost its broadcast license, so oops. If you put Apple CarPlay or Android Auto into a car, it gets used. According to new data from Edison Research, some auto manufacturers in the US are considering removing those technologies, which would be an instant no from me. Mind you, Nielsen is concerned that some manufacturers are also removing AM/FM radio, and gives quite a lot of data, which I linked to today, to show that it's a multi-billion-dollar gamble. Cumulus Media has signed with Xperi for its AutoStage radio audience measurement service. It's the first commercial licensee of the tool. I've seen AutoStage being presented at conferences for 10 years now? Is this really the first commercial licensee? Gosh, wow. Anyway, it's in 16 million cars, and it delivers quite a lot of helpful analytics. There's a man called Bob Walker, who is president of operations in Cumulus Media, who's quoted as saying, "The AutoStage heat maps are a particularly compelling example, visually illustrating where listening is concentrated on an aggregated basis relative to advertiser locations. By giving advertisers a richer understanding of audience distribution and listening trends, the platform helps them plan more effective campaigns, optimize audience-level planning, and maximise the impact of their radio investments." It's quite interesting. Now, the car is the number one listening place in the US. In the UK, though, only 26% is done in the car, 62% at home. And finally, Larry Gifford has written about the closure of Rogers radio stations in Vancouver. He says, "Listeners heard one voice, but it took dozens of people to make that voice trustworthy." I miss Larry writing about radio. It's a shame that he's not as involved in radio these days as he used to be. So good to see him writing there. Now, I am speaking next in Jakarta in Indonesia in early September at Radio Days Asia, keynoting on radio's international trends and its future. Looking forward to doing that, as well as looking after the podcast day at that event as well. Also, I'm hoping to be speaking at Podcast Movement in New York City. Now, I'm on the committee choosing speakers, so yeah. Anyway, that should be fun. September 14th to the 18th, I'll be there for the entire week, including the Sounds Profitable Business Summit as well. And thank you to the many supporters of this podcast and of the newsletter. Supporters include Media Results, Inc., Radio King, Admaster, Radio.co, and Radio Zeit. Thank you to all of those for your support and many others, as well as our personal supporters, David Furnham, Marty from New York, Gavin Watson, Greg Strassel, Sam Phelps, Richard Hilton, Emma Gibbs, Jocelyn Abbey and James Masterton as well. If you would like to support this podcast in any way, well, you can buy me a coffee. Buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland is where to give regularly, or just give a one-off coffee or 5. You can do that too. And there's also a newsletter version of this newsletter podcast. If you want that, you'll find that at radioland.email. I'm on Mastodon as well. If you're there too, just search for my name, and my website has more detail about who I am and what I do and whether I can help you further as well. You'll find that at james.cridland.net. And until next time, keep listening.